All right, I think we're live. Um, Hi guys, I wanted to do another video for those of you that weren't able to come to Thursday night, February 23rd meeting. We've had so much sickness going on with the flu and the stomach bug, so I hope everybody's feeling better. But I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to have access to the information and access to the same presentation that I presented that evening. I have created little packets. I made one for everyone that night. I will send them home Monday. Tomorrow is the 27th, I think. So that'll be coming home in your child's homework folder. These are yours to keep. You do not have to do the activities and send them back in. It was just a way for you guys to practice. So I want to show you what will be in your child's folder, how to use it, why your child is getting it. So let me just pull up the presentation that we did that evening. And in true Gilmore fashion, a little dribble. It's all right, they will fix it. Sometimes it doesn't work the first time I try it. I'm so sorry. You got to love it. Really do. Wow, that's not what I wanted. Hmm. I'm hoping that it is sharing with you what I've got on my screen right now. It should say on target for success. If this isn't working, then I'll redo the video. So let's just go ahead and go through. I wanted to start the presentation to let everybody know like where we started back in December when we had our first meeting, and we talked about hearing and recording sounds and words and why that was important, where your child was exactly on that level. If you take a look, you can see that the blue is where the majority of the class was in December. We had one child that could hear 0 sounds and words in December, one child that was consistently hearing just the beginning sounds and words. A huge number of our students, 15, were hearing all the sounds and words, and these are simple words that typically had just 3 letters in them, like bat and ran and bug, those types of words that they could hear and record all those sounds appropriately. We had 3 students that were in digraphs, and those are the SH, the sh, and the TH, the f, and the CH, the ch, and even the WH, the wh words. Whether they were hearing it at the beginning or at the end of words, they were consistently able to hear and record that particular sound. And that's basically where as high as our kids would go. So in December, we created packets that took you to the next level, the next steps. And if you take a look at the orange, we have made some big growth. We're starting to see them spread over to this right-hand side. We still have one child, if you look in the orange, one child that's still unable to hear and record the sounds and words. But you can see that this child that was doing beginning sounds has now moved, and now we have middle sounds in words. And we had somebody kind of backtrack, and it may have just been an off day. But we needed to put them in the particular level, and if they needed to go back and redo that particular concept, we put them in a group that addressed that need. Um, we have about 5 kids that are doing those digraphs. We have 2 that are working in blends, those SLPL, BR, BL, all those 2 letters that make those blends. Affricate blends, now those are the ones that when you're using your teeth and your lips and there's friction, so that's where that affricate comes from. And those are your TR, those tr and dr. They typically, when they're writing them, they come out as a different letter, and it's hard for them to hear and distinguish between. So we really focused on that, and those kids have mastered that particular level. And we have nasal blends. Those are like your NGs, sang, sing, and MPs like camp and jump. They don't necessarily hear that M part in the word. And then we had one child that moved on to long vowel patterns. Those are your letters that typically end in E. And we talk about it being a bossy E. It bosses the vowel in the middle to not say its regular sound that we've learned that he wants it to say its name. So like in face, the A doesn't say A, the A says A. So that was just one of the things that they start off with. And then there are vowel teams, and it goes on and on. But this is really awesome growth. We wanted to show how it impacts their reading as well. The blue is where the class started, the very beginning of kindergarten. So that was around the beginning of September. We had 9 kids that were less than print concepts, and that means that they just weren't familiar with how print works inside the text. Being able to understand the directionality where you start on the left-hand side and move to the right, and once you get to the end of the text line, that there's more text to follow, that you go down and under, and it's called the back swoop. And being able to hop to the different words, match the word that comes out of your mouth with the actual word that's on the page. So if there's 3 words on the page, 3 words should come out of your mouth, that kind of thing. Differentiating between the difference between a letter and a word. Being able to look and know what a period is and be able to verbalize what that is for. Those are just some of the things that the questions that they're asked at that print concept level. And so we had 9 kids that were below that level. That means they had not met that particular level. We had 1 child that was print concept, so understood how print worked. Then reading behaviors at the beginning of the year, there were 7. So that means they had mastered that print concept, and they had also, when given a book, was able to determine the repeated pattern with that one word change. So if it was just a consistent sentence on every page, I can see the dog, I can see the cat, I can see the shoe. Every page changed just one word. And the picture clue was supposed to give the support to be able to determine what that new word was on every page. We would read a couple of pages, and then we would let them take over, and we would just note any reading behaviors that we saw as they read through the book. A lot of kids just kind of shut down, like, I can't read. They don't even try. So that's why we had the numbers in that print concept area. They also had to listen and say, listen to a word. What do you hear at the beginning of that word? Here is another word. What do you hear at the end of that word? So just seeing if they understand how the letters work within that word, just checking in and seeing what their knowledge is. So this is pretty typical for kids to begin the year. You know, we have a lot of those less than print concepts, understanding the vocabulary and the terminology that they'll be hearing with with the teacher in guided reading and during whole group lessons. So it just kind of gives us a base to build upon. We had one child that was reading a level C. It's a more complicated text. There's lots of sight words in that kind of text, and still picture support. And then also that level E, and it even more sight words, a little less picture support. There's some more words that the picture isn't necessarily supporting, but they're having to listen and think about the story and making those decoding strategies to be able to figure out what some of those unknown words are within the text. So that's pretty typical of the Blue, is where we start out. We do tend to have like a couple of readers, and then the bulk of the kids just, learning that terminology and what we're going to be asking of them. So the burgundy, or this reddish pink color, this is the mid-year assessment. This is what we did in January. You can see that there's been growth all throughout, and it may be just teeny tiny growth, but it's growth nonetheless. We have one student who has mastered those print concepts. They understand how print works. We had 2 children at reading behaviors, and honestly, these kids read the level B. They just messed up on some of the words, careless errors. So we are addressing that within guided reading group. So they have been reading B's with me. They just ran through it and didn't use those strategies. So they're reading behaviors based on the assessment, but really within the classroom, they are level B's. We had 5 level B's, and a couple of these messed up on the comprehension questions at the level C. So that number is a little different as well. C is the grade level expectation at mid-year. We had 3 C's. We had 3 D's, level D's, which is the expectation at the end of kindergarten. So that's pretty promising that we already had 3 students who are at that end of grade expectation. We had 5 students at the level E. We had 1 student at level F and 1 student at level H. And I can tell you within guided reading groups, those levels and already starting to change. I've already done a progress monitor event, and it's really, really exciting to see how our strategic planning has moved these kids already within 3 weeks of getting back their results from mid-year. We were able to look at those running records and address the specific needs of those students so that they could move on to the next level. So I'm really, really excited about these kids and their growth. One of the things that we wanted to talk to you about were sight word strategies. We've gone over this at the beginning of the year, but the team decided that we wanted to just go over it again, make sure every parent understood what it is and why we do it. The Build It, that is when you take the magnetic letters, or there are paper letters in your little kit that I'm sending home that you can cut apart, and they can practice building or making those words with these letters. So pulling out the letters for like come, C-O-N-E, saying the letter name, as they put the letters in the correct order to build those sight words, those 5 sight words that they bring home each week. We have had massive success with front loading those sight words. So that's why we're continuing to put those sight words into place each week, that they're learning at their own individual level and speed. It's in addition to the whole group sight words that we pull from the poems that we work on each week, and also in addition to different sight words that may appear within a text that we may work on at the guided reading small group level. So it's all these components working together, and they get really excited at guided reading table when they see a sight word. They're like, oh, that's my sight word. I said, see, there's the whole point of me giving you those sight words to learn each week. So because they're going to appear in all of these books that you're reading, and you're not having to decode them, you automatically know them. It just makes teaching the guided reading lessons so much easier, because they can focus on decoding strategies of other words in the text and not having to code the unknown words plus those sight words. It gets to be too much. They're spending a lot of time and energy in the decoding process rather than the reading process. Mix and fix, that's when you're going to take those letter tiles and you're going to mix them up. So if it's come, you're just going to mix up the C, O, M, and E and have the child put them back in order, saying the letter sounds as they put them in the correct order, and then reading the word, running their finger under the word to make sure that it is right. We do each of these steps 3 times. Repetition is so important and so key, and practicing these words every night is key as well. What's missing is when you take away a letter. So if the C-O-M-E is laying on the table, take away the C, have the child close their eyes while you take away a letter and see if they can determine which letter is missing. It may be a little harder at the beginning of the week when they first get their sight words, but by the end of the week, they should have quick automaticity to know which letter's missing and where it needs to be placed back to create the sight word that they are working on. And then table ride, it's just another multisensory activity where they take their index finger and middle finger, those 2 fingers. There's a connection between using those 2 fingers, feeling the forming of the letter on a table or carpet, and it's something that's connected and the brain picks up on it. And I don't know if it's like muscle memory or there's a whole lot of research. I'm just doing it because I know that it totally works. And write the letters, saying the letter names as you're writing the word, and then checking the word, running your finger under that imaginary word they just wrote, just to reinforce that that is the sight word that they are learning. There is a YouTube link that has me going through and demonstrating each one of these steps. So if you need to take a look at it and see it in action, you can pull up this website. It's a YouTube video, and just become familiar with how we work with sight words. And then just to help you understand why sight words are so important, knowing the sight word for the test on Friday, that is all great and wonderful, but they really truly need to know it, which means they have to be able to read it every time they see that sight word, whether it's in isolation or within a text, and they have to always be able to spell it correctly, whether in isolation or within their writing. You may think that they have that sight word and it is theirs and they have mastered it, but when you look at their writing, and something that typically happens for went, you will see them spelling went, W-I-N-T, because their brain is still in that, let's stretch that word, but it needs to be, oh, that's a word I know. They need to have that click and say, I know how to spell went, and W-E-N-T should be spelled within the text. So just having them really, truly thinking about this concept and this skill when they are writing as well as reading. So word problem solving strategies, and at the different levels, so you can understand what it is your child should be doing at these different levels. We only have just a couple of people at this A, B level. These are very simple texts, 1 sentence on each page, strong picture support, and what they are doing at these levels is looking at the picture and then going back and checking. It's called cross-checking with that beginning sound. If there's a picture of a dad in a book, but the author chose to use the word father, the sentence may be, I like my dad, or the sentence is, I like my father, but the child sees a dad in the picture and they read it as, I like my dad. They need to pay attention to that beginning sound. It can't be dad because it doesn't start with a D. It's a F. So they're having to use that beginning sound strategy to determine what that word is. Some of the books that we use are a little older, and father pops up a lot within the text, even though typically a lot of us do not call our dads father, we call them dad or daddy. But they have to really start noticing that beginning sound feature of a word. At the C and D levels, where we've got a good little number of kids, they're going and looking all the way through to the end of the word. This is where I saw a lot of mistakes within the running record. They looked at the beginning sound, but they didn't look past that, and they just let a word fly. We want them to be word detectives and look all the way through the word to make sure that the word that pops out of their mouth makes sense with the letters that are on the page. So looking at the word has an understanding that it cannot be had because it has a D at the end. They have similarities between those two words, but they have to be that word detective and look all the way to the end to determine that it is indeed the word has. So pay attention to those letters at the beginning and the end, that level in C and D. The next level, level E and F, now these kids are, they've mastered the beginning sound, they've mastered looking at the ending sound. Now let's look inside the middle. It can change by just one letter, or it can change by a couple of letters. Typical mistake is went and won't. Noticing the difference between those two, that went has a W-E and won't is a W-A. And being that word detective and looking through now the entire word to determine what that word should be. They're also listening to themselves as well as they read. Making sure that the sentence that they're reading makes sense to them. And I'm so proud when I did some progress monitoring this past week. There were kids that would first read through it and they would make the mistake. And as I'm progress monitoring, I cannot interfere. I've got to just make notes of what they're doing while they're reading. And it was just so amazing to see that they would get to the end of the sentence and they go, that didn't make sense. And they'd go back and read it, stop at that word that didn't make sense, fix it, and keep going. And like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So it was really awesome to see that focusing on that piece of making sure what's coming out of your mouth makes sense is really making an impact with the students. And then the final levels that we wanted to focus on, there are a lot of kids that are above this, but just this is what we really need to look at. Level G and above, it's called analogies. And we use this a lot with our interactive writing on the carpet, knowing one letter or knowing one word and being able to use that one word to spell another word. So we chose the words come and some. If you know some, then you'll be able to spell come, or you'll be able to read it. Writing and reading go hand in hand. There is that correlation. One supports the other. Having that knowledge in one area supports having that knowledge in the other area. A lot of things that pop up while we are writing or reading, using that word my, M-Y, and being able to read the word by. Understanding that how those letters work within that word by, and then using it to identify or read another word. So that's just that's really an awesome thing to watch them do too. You'll hear them going, hey, that looks like that word. And in that word, those letters say I, like in my, it's I, my. So if I read by, I'll be able to understand that the B says but, and the Y is going to say I, like in my. We also use children's names within the classroom. We have a student named Avery, and we use her Y at the end of her name in order to read and spell other words like happy and funny. Before, towards the beginning of the school year, when we were recording those sounds and words, we learned that two E's make that strong E sound, like in the word feet, and they would put it at the end of words, and that's where they were developmentally. Now, because we have learned our friends' names and we're learning how the letters work within their names, they are understanding that that Y at the end of a word makes that E sound, and it fits on the end of these words that they need to try and stretch and spell. So using what they know in order to read and write other words. A really awesome skill. It's a higher level skill that these kids are really starting to put into use. Make and break word strategies. This is a skill that we're working on. We want to start at smaller word levels to teach them the most efficient way to break a word apart. So when they get into those larger words that when they come to them within a text, they don't just stop and shut down and go, oh, there's no way I can figure out that word. I want them to get used to looking for chunks of sound within a word. So I have a video here. There's a link right here, and it shows you how to break words apart, being able to understand that those letters can work together to make chunks of sound, which would be easier to break and blend back together. So when they get into those larger words like important, they can look at important, so that they're not saying p, o, t, and going through and saying each letter sound, because that's not the most efficient way. By the time they get to the fifth letter, they've already forgotten what they've said at the beginning. So we're chunking those sounds together within that word, chunks of sound. So it'll make it easier for them to read larger words. But you can copy this link and watch that at your own leisure. I didn't want to play it within this video. I'll let you do that. So the comprehension portion is where we really wanted to focus, excuse me, on Thursday night. What we noticed, the kids are really awesome at answering questions that can be found directly within the text. Some of them struggled a little bit, but getting them used to using that book to answer those questions. We don't let them use the book to retell the story. We typically let them read the story twice, and then we close up the book and ask them, okay, tell me what happened in the story. Tell me the beginning, tell me the middle, tell me the end. And they cannot use the book in order to do that because the pictures would help too much. We want to make sure that they're thinking about the story while they're reading it and really comprehending what's happening within the story. So that's the only portion that they do not get to use the book on. Any other questions that are posed to the kids, they are allowed to use the book, find that in the story, show me where the character did this, or show me when the character said this. So using the text to be able to find those right there answers. And then helping them determine what the problem was in the story. It may not explicitly say the problem was blah, 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 blah. They have to look at the story as a whole and understand that there's just something wrong. There's just something not quite right that's happening in the story. Identify that problem. And then after they identify the problem, talk about how the problem was solved in the story. Was it another character, or did the main character fix something that they were doing wrong? Just understanding what is happening within that text. And then these last two, they're tapping into their creative side. What would you do if you were the character? If you had this problem, how would you handle it? And a lot of them are like, what? I don't know. They don't know how to answer that question. So when you read with your child and they have like a problem solution story, ask them, well, what would you have done if you had been that character? How would you have handled this problem? How would you have tried to fix it? And how would you change the ending of the story? Maybe the ending wasn't quite what they wanted. And well, how would you change it? How would you make things happen differently in the story? So tapping into that creative side, thinking beyond the text and using the background knowledge and the understanding about how life works. I know they're 5 and 6 years old and they have a very limited view of what life really is, But these stories tend to lend themselves to what 5 and 6-year-olds have experienced in life. Now, our kids that are getting into those higher level books, they tend to get a little bit more complex. The problems begin to be a little bit of those older nature, those into first grade, beginning of second grade problems that they may have encountered. So it may be a little bit harder for them to understand the whole concept of the story. So just talk to them about it, especially if you've got those higher I level I's, J's, K's, L's. Talk to them about what's going on within the story, why that character is doing that, why this happened, just to kind of expose them to some of those story concepts, so it won't hold them back. So we wanted everybody to have a chance to see what your child has to do on these assessments. So this is a level F text. And the parents that were there that night were like, wow, this would be level F. That's a lot of words. And I'm like, yeah, and it's over several pages, and they would have picture support. But since you guys are readers, we didn't give you the picture support. We used a story that's very similar to some of the books that we have within our literacy closet, and used that as a premise and kind of tied it to what our modern day toys and problems may occur. So I'll read this really quick, and then you are going to have an opportunity to answer a written comprehension question based on the story. It's called Sam's New Ride. Excuse me. Sam had a new hoverboard. He was excited to learn how to use it. It was hard to make it go the right way and not fall. Sam's sister Kate was playing with her new chalk in the driveway where Sam was practicing. Sam shouted to his dad, "Look, Dad, I can go in circles." Kate began to cry. Sam had run over his sister's drawings and messed them up. Kate jumped up and chased Sam, trying to push him off his hoverboard. Sam jumped off the board and ran inside his house. Their dad called Kate over to him and helped her fix her drawings. It's just a typical what may happen in real life that they can relate to story. This is a level F. So at this level F, they would be asked to retell what happened to the story. They would answer a couple of comprehension questions, some that are very specific and targeted to what happened in the story. So who were the characters in the story? They would say Sam, Kate, and Dad. What was Sam practicing on a hoverboard? What was Kate doing in the story? Kate was drawing in the driveway with her brand new chalk. Make sure when they are answering these questions that they are using complete sentences. We talk about how we are not cavemen and we're not just giving one-word answers. We are almost first graders and we talk in complete sentences. And we're going to go over a little bit about how those complete sentences should sound when they're answering a question. So after they read the story, and we'll allow them to read it through twice, then they are answering those just oral comprehension questions. Then comes the written comprehension portion. They will be given 2 written comprehension questions, and they have to read the question on their own, and they have to answer the question on their own without any support, without any guidance. So here would be, excuse me, this is how one of the questions may be worded. What made Kate so upset? Use parts of the story in your answer. So they would be given a sheet. They would have this at the top, and then they would be left to their own devices to answer this question. Here's a rubric that we use to kind of guide the students on the type or the level of answer that they would be giving us. Restating the question. And what I have the students do is we underline the words that we would use within that question that we could use in our answer. So we would start it off with Kate was so upset. So we would underline those words, Kate, so upset. Then because And the key portion here is to use parts of the story in your answer. So using those details, because a level 3, which is the highest, most complex understanding of the story, says you prove your response by including 2 or more details from the story. So not just saying Kate was so upset because of her brother, they've got to be able to give the details as to what was going on in the story that caused Kate to be upset. A 2, she's using 1 detail from the book. A level 1 is they answered the question, but they didn't use any details to support their answer. And then the 0 is they didn't understand the question or they didn't answer the question. They may have understood it, but it may not have come across with that writing portion because it tends to get a little hairy with kindergarten, reading the question, making a plan for the writing portion, and actually having that come to fruition on the page. It's a little hard because of just developmentally being able to handle all that complexity of what we're asking them to do. So if you'll you can pause the video if you want, but take a shot at trying to answer this question with using parts of the story in your answer. And then once you're done, then you can check how your answer matched up to the different levels because we've given you examples or exemplars of each level. So if you want to pause it now, that's fine. This is the writing rubric that the teacher who does the actual formal assessment on the child would use. It's very similar to the student rubric, but it just uses some academic vocabulary that the kids haven't been exposed to. The students are answering all the components of the question and using the text to extend the understanding, answering the components, and just uses the text just to answer the question. Is limited information at that level 1, and the 0 just incorrect. So here are the exemplars. The level 3. They have a complete understanding of what's going on in the story. They're thinking beyond the text, understanding how the characters are feeling and why their actions caused this type of feeling. So Kate was so upset because Sam was concentrating on how to ride his new hoverboard and was excited when he learned how to make it go in circles. He called out to his dad and was not paying attention to his sister where she was drawing with her new chalk. He ran over drawings and messed them up. So you can see that this exemplar was a child restating the question. Kate was so upset because, and then all the details, pulling in that word concentrating. He was just focusing on that actual learning the hoverboard part. That wasn't specifically stated in the text, but they took it beyond the text to understand that that's why this child ran, or why Sam ran over Kate's drawings, because he really wasn't paying attention to his environment. He was just focusing on the task at hand. Understanding that he got excited because it was going in circles and he was really proud of himself and wanted dad to see, and didn't notice his sister, and then in turn messed up her drawing, causing her to be upset. So tons and tons and tons of detail at that level 3. The level 2, which is the lowest level that you can have to be able to master this particular level and move on to the next one, try to read the next level in reading, would be Sam was learning how to ride his hoverboard and ran over his sister's drawings. So it's using the details that came directly from the book, not making that connection that he was just learning something new, like the first one did, extending that understanding, but just explicitly what the text told them. And then a 1, which would not be enough to master this level, would be Sam ran over drawings. And it's just straight to the point. You can see that they're not restating the question to help them stay on track at answering. So looking at these exemplars, how did you rate? Where did you land? Would you have been, that exemplar level 3, extending the understanding, or were you a 2, which is great and fine, or were you a level 1, which you just stated what happened exactly, but didn't give any kind of support to your answer. Or if we didn't put a 0, because it means that you didn't answer the question at all. But just kind of look, this is what your child has to do at this level F. And they don't just answer 1, they answer 2 of these written comprehension questions, in addition to the oral comprehension questions they have to go through before they even get to this written portion. So it's a lot being asked of them. We wanted you to be able to see what it looked like and what the expectations are at these particular levels. So we've come up with a little something to help these kids. A little just anchor chart that's going to help them answer these questions in the appropriate manner. We do this every day on the carpet. I've posted a couple of videos. The kids enjoy trying to be me, so I'm giving them that opportunity to be the mini Gilmer, the teacher, to help those kids that have it, to just reinforce their knowledge and be able to share it with the other kids. And for those kids that are kind of teetering and don't feel as comfortable, giving them a little bit of confidence. I give them support while they're up there, so that they're helping the friends on the carpet, and builds that confidence. So when they go and do this independently, they're going to be able to do it. So we call it Candy Wrap, and each one of the letters in wrap represents part of the what you have to do in order to get that mastery of answering the question. So the R means to restate the question. And like I said, we underline the words that we are going to need from the question in order to answer it. So why was Kate so upset? Use the details in the story. So we would have underlined Kate was so upset, and then the rest of it is going to be their words, or they can use the text to help fill in the rest of the answer, because we'll underline in the text as well to help support that. So restating the question, the A is to actually answer the question. Even at this level F's and G's, I have noticed that there are 2-part questions on these poor little kids. So it may not just be one question on that page. It may be one question with 2 parts. So they have to answer, why was the character angry at the dog? And why did he change his mind at the end? There's your 2 parts. You have to talk about why he was mad at the dog and then why he changed. So making sure that each part of the question or each component of the question is being answered. And then P for prove, that's using the text. And that's when we'll go back and we'll underline within the text what parts we're going to use. I don't want them writing in like the actual assessment books. So I have ordered these little things. They're called Wiki Sticks. And basically it's yarn that's been dipped in wax. And they can use that to underline. They'll put it actually on the book. It sticks to the book. And it helps them understand that this is the part of the book that I need to use in order to reinforce the answer. And so those should be coming in within the week. But we always said that we're rappers and first grade writers, and we don't speak like cavemen. So our answers should not be a caveman answer. It should be a first grade rapper answer. So there's that. So how can you support your child at home? What can you do with the books that come home to help them make the most out of the practice that we're sending? And so basically step 1, make your child say the plan out loud. When we are doing the interactive writing and answering the question about the text that I have read to them on the carpet, we make a plan. We count how many words. I've had a couple of parents say, I was wondering why he was counting the words. Well, we count how many words that we're going to have to write. And we, if it's like over 6, the kids are going, oh my goodness, it's a college sentence. Can we do it? And I'm like, you totally can. You're geniuses. You can rock this out. No problem. So have them make that plan, say that plan out loud if they need to, count how many words that they're going to actually use, underline the words within the question that they're going to need to answer your question, and then point out the words within the text that they're going to need to answer the question as well. And then that step 2, that write the response restating the question. That underlining portion is going to help reinforce exactly what they need. Don't worry so much about things being spelled correctly, because the focus on this task is comprehension, not spelling. And what they'll be given an opportunity is to read back what they wrote. Now, if it is completely off the wall and it's just a bunch of letter strings, then no, they're not going to get the credit for it that they need. But if it's really, really close, and if the assessor has a little trouble understanding what it is they wrote, they allow the child to read back to them what they have written, and they can go, oh, okay, they've got it. This is just how they chose to spell that word. So don't worry so much about the spelling component as much as, did they comprehend? Are they able to take what they have understood has happened in the story and put it in written form? Just don't worry so much about the grammatical. So that's all I have. And I'm hoping this was beneficial. If not, and I got to go back and look and make sure that the screen sharing actually worked. We'll hope and see. I know it's a lot of me just blabbing away, but this is the only way I knew how to kind of get the information to you. In your packets, you are going to have, and I have the sheets, and not everybody has the same packet. So some of the stuff I'm showing may be targeted for your child and may not, just because of the different levels. If you remember looking at the beginning of the presentation, the kids were at the different reading levels, and so we tried to create packets that were very specific and targeted and made for them. So for our students that are those lower level levels, so like A's, B's, C's, D's, I included this in case, because some of the reading bags, this sheet has disappeared, so I just wanted to make sure you still had it. These are some of the reading strategies that we use to decode words, which is a great group of little decoding kids. Like I said, they're able to break words apart. They're starting to see chunks even in those smaller words. So looking at the picture clue is huge. Especially at those lower levels, they're helping the kids determine the unknown word. Getting your mouth ready to say the first sound. Stretching the word. So if it's like a 3-letter word, at, that's one of the basic strategies. Eventually, I want them to move on to doing at, cat. So that's chunking and seeing that little chunk of sound that they know, which will help them when it gets to be a bigger word. And that's that break that word apart, that at, cat. So maybe when they come to a word like category, they can go at, cat, then gore, and then e at the end, being able to break a word apart like that. Just because they've learned it at that lower level, they'll be able to do bigger words. Then thinking about the story, making sure that the guess that you have coming out of your mouth makes sense with what's going on in the story. Don't talk about a dinosaur if it's a story about a dog. So using that beginning sound, but also thinking, okay, there's not a dinosaur in here, so dinosaur's not going to come out of my mouth. Skipping the word and just saying the first sound and going on within the sentence, then you can go back and say, hey, this word will make sense there. And then read it again. Anytime they have a little difficulty reading a word and I say, oh, we struggled, it's always important to go back and read and make sure that the guess that they're putting in place makes sense. So you may see them going back and reading, going back and checking. Oh, that makes sense. I can keep going. I don't want them just to make that guess, keep going, not listening to themselves. They need to listen to make sure that they're comprehending what's happening. So there's that. Also, I put in here, these are for the lower levels too, things that you should be seeing them do. So levels A's and B's, level C and level D, these are the behaviors that you should see your child doing. So depending on what level book is being sent home, this is what you should see them do while they're reading some of the strategies. Questioning cards. I pulled this out of our guided reading book. Things that you can ask them, the who, what, where, when, and how. Just basic questions that you could see to check for understanding. Those are green questions. Yellow questions, which is making them look in more than one place in the text. Are they understanding? Do they know where that happened? Do you understand why that happened? So compare two characters. Then talk about the differences between two characters. What caused this to happen? So that cause and effect. And being able to determine what the main idea. So that would be in some of your nonfiction texts, those factual informational texts, and being able to give it examples as to why that is the main idea of the text. And then your red questions, they have to stop and they have to think about it and use their own background knowledge. I wonder why, or why do you think this happened, or what would happen if the character did this? So thinking beyond the text, using background knowledge and just experiences in life to be able to answer these red questions. And they even ask these higher order thinking questions even at these level C and D questions, or C and D level texts. They definitely ask them at the E's and F levels, but they appear in the C and D too. Looking through, making sure. This also goes with the lower level text I put in there. So some different strategies. It's called reciprocal teaching strategies. So predict what they think may happen. So before they turn the page, well, what do you think is going to happen next? Summarize. So after they read that page, tell me what happened on that page, just to check in for comprehension. Then clarifying, making a connection. Hey, this reminds me of that other book we read, or hey, that happened to us when we went on vacation. Just making those connections. And visualize. So when you read that, the picture clue may not have been able to give the support. So what did you see happening when you read that? Checking in. It's just basic comprehension. Everybody has this page, and it's just a list of words that they can practice breaking apart, breaking by just beginnings, looking for the endings, noticing that for, forked, fork, how that's changing, changing with the middle sounds, come, came, some, same, went, won't, cap, cup, is, has, bit, but, fit, at. And then parts, better, after. After is one of the sight words that some of the kids have already had, so they can use that TER to understand that says ter. And then if they can read that, then with better, they can see bet at the beginning and then ter and be able to put that together. So this is using what they know in order to read unknown words. The kids really do that, like the zoo. And so if you can read zoo, you can probably read wolf, woof, woof. Okay. They've also learned how to play around with the sounds in words when it may not come out, like that word woof came out a little differently, but they played with the sound to make it make sense. These are your letter tiles. That's what you can cut apart, and you can make and break words. You can use it to make the sight words and mix and fix. Everybody has that. Now, not everybody has this. This is for higher level readers, those level Fs and above. It's the written comprehension rubric of what the M-Class assessor will use to grade your child's written response. So this is the rubric they use. Here is the child's rubric that your child will use after they complete their written response, so they can kind of gauge where they are themselves. On the back of the written comprehension, we've got the example story so that you can practice doing that again if you need to. It has the question that we used and the exemplar. And these are two different questions. So one that we didn't go over, why was Sam able to get away from his sister? Use parts of the story in your answer, and it gives the exemplars for that as well. So there's that. You're also going to have sample texts. You get to keep them. We just printed them out, and they're yours to keep. They're based on your child's level. It may be just the next level up, especially if your child's in that transitional phase where the level that they've been working on has become easy, and now we need to bump it up to the next level. So I may have already sent home like a harder level for them to work on. And it has questions that we created that go specifically with that text. So just give you an opportunity to experiment and play around with what that would look like, and what the questions look like, and kind of gauge and decide how your child did. You do not need to turn those back into me. That's just, it's practice, and that's what we use it for. I think, oh, and there are sight words. They're color-coded sheets. I think there are different shades of blue. And the first little packet, it's got two and like a little slip of paper. Those are your kindergarten sight words. The next, I think it's a dark blue. Those are your first grade sight words. And then it's like a bluish green are your second grade sight words. And the kids have been wanting to play My Pile, Your Pile at home with you guys. So you just cut those apart, and they're kind of like making them little flashcards. And if the child can read it, then they get to keep it. If they can't read it, then you get to keep it. It's just a game that we play in the classroom. We'll play boys against girls, or we'll play teacher against the whole group. And they've gotten really, really good because they have beat me a lot. They never let me win anymore. You know, at the beginning of the year, I beat them constantly, and now the tables have turned and they beat me all the time. If you have any questions about this presentation, please let me know. Dojo me. I try to get on there as much as possible. Look through your packet, watch this presentation, and then email me or dojo me if you have any questions. I'm hoping that it's going to help you understand a little bit of what your child's going through as far as with the assessments. Our assessment window will open up, I think, probably a week after we get back from spring break, which is April 14th. And we'll be off for a week, and should be like the 1st of May when that M-Class window opens. And so they'll start pulling our kids. They'll pull the highest level readers first. It's just so that the ones that are at those lower levels, and they can determine which ones are higher level readers based on the progress monitoring I do. So I try to check in with the kids. Since we have so many kids that are on grade level or above, I don't have to check in with them quite as much, but I still try to, just so that they're going to have to read so many books at the end of the year. I don't want them to have to read book after book after book and not truly get an idea of what they can do, because they're going to get frustrated and it's too much reading. They'll get tired of it. So I want to try to give them a good starting point, the reading assessors. So I try to check in at least once or twice within the grading period for those higher level readers, and then more often with our lower level readers that I'm really trying to monitor and make sure that those reading strategies are starting to make sense and they're using them consistently without any prompts, that they're doing it on their own. Continue to work on sight words, continue to do that reading homework every night. The spelling homework that's going home, it's really important as well. It really helps support what we're doing in this reading and helping them with that chunking or breaking words apart. So continue to work on that. Thank you so much for everything you've done. I told the parents that came Thursday night that having parental support has been key for this class, and that's why we have so many above grade level, that what we're doing in the classroom is being supported at home, and the kids feel that everybody has put a lot of time and effort and energy into this, and it makes them want to put time and effort and energy into it. They are so motivated. They are really self-motivated little learners. And it's been such a pleasure to have these kids. So thank you so much for your support and everything that you do to help your child be successful. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this was informative. If not, let me know that too. It's all about communication and what we can do to help your child be successful. So thanks.